All right, let's just jump right in. We're going to tackle a huge question in Web3, and it's one that a lot of people get wrong. Where does real, lasting growth actually come from? I'll give you a hint. The answer probably isn't what you're thinking.
So yeah, let's just start with that big question. Think for a second about the top crypto projects, the ones that are really making waves. Where are they getting all their users, all that traffic? Where does it really come from? You might think, oh, it's got to be Twitter, right? I mean, with all those threads, the constant posting, but no, that's actually not the main source.
Okay, well, what about Discord then? Building out that huge, engaged community. Super important for sure, but that's not the main engine driving new growth either.
And it is definitely not just about posting more content day in and day out. The truth is, real, sustainable growth in this space, it comes from something else entirely.
And that brings us to the first big idea we really need to unpack. I call it the myth of more content. This is the conventional wisdom, the playbook almost everyone follows, but the problem is, it's just wrong. It's fundamentally flawed.
I mean, look at this. This is the standard marketing playbook, right? Post every day, build up your community, maybe run a few ads. It seems so logical, so straightforward. A lot of projects believe that if they just keep shouting louder and more often, eventually people will just show up. But this whole strategy, it leads to a very specific and pretty problematic result.
And that gets us to the absolute heart of the issue, the massive difference between just getting attention and actually building trust. See, this is where that old playbook completely falls apart. It's fantastic at getting you one of these things, but it totally fails at the other, more important one. This really lays out the two paths you can take. On one side, you have the attention approach. You get these awesome-looking traffic spikes, right? Looks great on a graph for a day, maybe two. And then, poof, it's gone. No retention, no stickiness, no real adoption. But the trust approach? That's a different game. Yeah, it builds slower, but it brings in actual users who stick around. It creates lasting growth, and it leads to the holy grail, genuine adoption. And here's the bottom line. It's simple, really. Attention doesn't equal trust. You can buy attention with ads, you can scream for it on social media, you can post 1,000,000 times a day, but none of that automatically turns into the only currency that truly matters in Web3, and that's trust. And without that trust, well, your growth just isn't going to last. It's that simple. Any strategy that isn't built on a foundation of trust is basically like trying to build a skyscraper on quicksand. It might look cool for a hot second, but it is absolutely destined to come crashing down. All right, so if the old playbook is broken, what is the answer? If just creating more content and running more ads isn't the key, then what is? Well, the real secret, the kind of contrarian truth about how you get sustainable growth, is something called distribution. So, what do I even mean by distribution? Look, it's not just about spraying your name everywhere and hoping it sticks. No, it's about the strategic placement of your project. It's about showing up on platforms and in ecosystems where the people you want to reach already hang out, and more importantly, on platforms they already trust. You're basically borrowing credibility from players who've already earned it.
And this really gets to the core psychology of why distribution is so incredibly powerful. Think about it. People don't trust what you say about yourself. They trust where they see you. You can shout from the rooftops that you're trustworthy, but it doesn't mean much. But when someone sees your project featured on the platform they already use and trust for good info, man, their entire perception of you changes in an instant. Your location becomes a silent endorsement.
Okay, so let's get practical. How does this actually work? How do you go from this kind of abstract idea of placement to a real strategy that builds actual, tangible trust?
It really all boils down to one critical moment. Picture this. Someone hears about your project, maybe from a friend, maybe they see a single tweet. What is the very first thing they do? They Google you. And what they find on that first page of results, that decides everything. That is your moment of truth, right there.
So take a look at where the top-tier projects always seem to show up. It's not an accident, you know? They are strategically placing themselves inside these trusted ecosystems. Getting listed on CoinMarketCap, being featured on what's now Binance Square, getting an article in Cointelegraph, that's not just a nice little marketing win. It's a deliberate act of building authority. You're weaving yourself into the very fabric of the market narrative.
And this is where the real magic happens, because it's a compounding effect. It's like a snowball rolling downhill. First, you get that one feature in a trusted place. That initial placement gives you more visibility. Then, as your visibility in more trusted places grows, your authority starts to build. And once that authority solidifies, trust just scales massively in a way that posting on Twitter every day could never, ever touch.
So this brings us to the big payoff. We can actually boil this whole strategy down to a super simple but really powerful formula. And it's the formula for getting the one thing every single project is after: real, honest-to-goodness user adoption.
Step 1, visibility builds authority. It all starts here. Just by being seen in the right places, those trusted ecosystems we talked about, you stop being just another project and you start becoming an authority.
Next up, authority builds trust. See, that authority that you build, it's what generates real, genuine trust. People start to see you as legitimate because the platforms they already see as legitimate are basically vouching for you. And finally, trust drives adoption. That trust is the fuel that powers everything. People will not use, invest in, or build on a project that they don't trust, period. Trust is that final, crucial bridge that takes someone from just knowing you exist to actually using your product.
So let's just end on this thought. The single most important question you should be asking for your project isn't, are we creating enough content? The real question is, where are we being seen? Because at the end of the day, real traffic, real growth, it doesn't come from your content calendar. It comes from your distribution.
Subscribe and visit Web3 Newswire for visibility and credibility of your Web3 projects.